Hi, welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan. You know, a beautiful, beautiful expression in our faith is respect for life in all of its stages, from conception to natural death. It's a very important but beautiful teaching in our faith. Our church, of course, never views death as a bad thing. We understand very much that there's a lot of humanness and loss of loved ones is not easy. But there's also a beautiful part about being born again into the eternal love of God. So to reach that stage, we must give up this life. But there are some things that we like to consider today. As we get older, it certainly is part of our thoughts to prepare our transition from life on earth to life in heaven. And I think it's nice to not shy away from that. It may not be the most pleasant topic for some people, but it's important for us to make some plans in so many different ways about the end of our life. I have three wonderful, wonderful folks today that are going to be part of our show. They're speakers at a special presentation sponsored by the Diocese of Trenton, the Office of Worship, and the Department of Pastoral Care. And this presentation is called Faith, Hope, and Love at Life's End, a Catholic Perspective on End of Life. It's going to take place in our diocese on Thursday, November 20th at St. Robert Bellarmine Church in Freehold from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And if you're interested, we'll have a little more information about that. Actually, there are 4 speakers at the event. 3 of them are with me today because we can afford to have them, and it's nice to have them with us. They're going to share some of the information that can help us to plan our own end of life. Monsignor Sam Siriani is the Director of Office of Worship for the Diocese of Trenton, and he's the pastor of St. Robert Bellarmine Church. And he was going to talk to us about the funeral rites and our faith. And I don't mind saying that I've known Father Sam for a few good years. He's a marvelous, marvelous priest and a great friend, and I'm very proud to always spend some time. Sam, thanks for being with us.
Welcome.
It's a delight to have you.
It's good to be here.
And sitting next to him, smiling all the time, is his brother, Father Anthony Siriani. And he's the pastor of St. Helena in Edison. And that's in another diocese that we love also in Metuchen. He'll be talking prayerfully about considering the end-of-life medical decisions. And there are so many, and they do get complicated. Father Anthony, thanks again for your time to be with us. It's another beautiful priest. With us also is Deacon Jim Grogan. Deacon's a transitional deacon with a kind of a tremendous history to his life. He's also right now at St. Robert Bellarmine in Freehold. And he's going to talk about when I become the matriarch or patriarch of my family. As I mentioned, there are 4 presenters to the program that's going to happen in Freehold. Father Michael Manning could not be here with us today, and his presentation will be on the Catholic doctrine and end-of-life decisions. Gosh, great to have you people with us.
Great to be here.
You know,
Thank you.
maybe we can start with that presentation that you're all going to be doing in your parish. Is this something new? Whose idea was it? How did it come about? And how come you 3 are all part of this?
Well, it really began with a discussion between Deacon Jim and myself about end-of-life issues. Jim brought it to my attention that a survey was done in our state, and it was a very high percentage of citizens in New Jersey who believe or who are accepting that physician-assisted suicide is acceptable. And I'm just going to turn it over.
Yeah, it was a surprising thing to me when I saw that. And Monsignor and I were talking over dinner at one point, because the thing that I struggled with that immediately jumped off the page when I read the article was that the definition that the proposed law had relative to what would qualify for physician-assisted suicide was the very same definition of hospice care. Someone who has medically been determined to have approximately 6 months or less to live. And what do you do with that time? Where do you turn, either in a sense of desperation towards assisted suicide, or in a sense of faith to that sacred time that can be a period of hospice care. So that's where our conversation began.
So hospice care certainly is very different than assisted suicide. I mean, hospice is a great advocate of giving us a beautiful experience, if we can call it that, into our next life. Have the people been asking for something like this, or are you just kind of saying, "Gee, we better get some of this information out there because it is so important to us and it's all part of our life"? Yes, Anthony.
Well, people are asking because they're getting mixed up with what is assisted suicide and what is hospice care. In hospice care, we prepare people for meeting the Lord and end of life, but it doesn't mean speeding it up or making it where they have a decision the time and day that they're going to go. And I feel when they invited me to come on board, I have 11 years hospital work before I became a parish priest, pastor in the hospital, my doctorate in pastoral care. And a lot of my work is being able to speak to people and have them be comfortable in talking to their family, how important that is. There was a book written years ago on, there's all these books on birthing. There was a book written on deathing, and it's how to get excited when God's calling us home. So when they invited me to be part of this, I was very excited to be able to share my experience and to be able to share the talent that God has given me.
And we all speak so often about, in our Catholic faith especially, on the dignity of all people, and certainly the dignity of getting older. And you guys can look at me and say, "Don't smile," I mean, but there is I'll tell you.
You still look like you did when I was first
Yeah,
ordained,
thanks.
and I won't tell you how long ago
I'll buy
that
you
was.
coffee later, Sam. Thank you. But there is a dignity of getting a little older, and your mind does change a little bit, and you do get different thoughts and different patterns come into your lifestyle. Are these topics that we're talking about now becoming more popular because people are living longer?
Well, I believe it's people are living longer. I believe that the increase of the number of people who are looking at long care illnesses, chronic illnesses that do have an impact on quality of life is causing more and more conversation. Another element, and you had mentioned it, is my part of the day is to talk about how the rituals of the Catholic Church are there not only to say farewell to our loved one, but to help us with the grieving process who remain, because I don't think Americans know how to grieve, which leads to a lot of other health issues. So along with helping people come to realize they're getting older. One of the things I enjoyed was what will be Jim's topic, when you discover you're the matriarch or the patriarch of the family. I think that takes everybody, it shocks them. It's like, oh my God, I'm the oldest one in here. I think that begins the process of, okay, how am I going to live out this part of my life?
I'm smiling because a few years back, we were burying somebody in my family. And all of a sudden, somebody came over and handed me something that looked very official. And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "That's the deed to the cemetery plot. You're now the owner of the deed." So I have the decision, I guess, of, can you go in here? Anyway, it was just like a kind of a family joke. But you're right. All of a sudden now we do that. How's the response been to the program that you're putting on? A lot of folks interested, calling up. They want to be part of this?
Just from some of the conversations I've had with some of our deacons, I've already know of several who are signed up, who are coming. We're hoping that bereavement ministers will also sign up, and also interested laity, people who have heard about it and would like to know about these issues, especially the issues that I think Father Michael Manning and my brother will be addressing, because that's really, kind of the core of the day.
And hopefully this interview will be broadcast before the show so that our geriatric population realizes that they do have a say. and they need to be able to make their decisions and their decisions known. And I really feel that a lot of, especially where our healthcare is going, that a lot of that is really being challenged, and the church is really standing firm on that to be able to give them that respect that is so needed, and that they do have the say in preparing themselves, and also that spiritual walk. You look at any study that was done, and I'm sure the three of you could agree with me, that those who have a spiritual life and connected with a traditional church are very comfortable in preparing oneself for death. Those who are disconnected, those are the ones that we really have to reach out to and help. And we're seeing more and more of that because we're living longer. So we're not just dealing with the young people, but we're dealing with the mature people. And hopefully that's what we'll address.
And I think, Father Anthony, it's in my own experience, just to give the people a chance to talk about the beauty of their life and the beauty of, and to allow, and sometimes they even give permission to let people go, right, so to speak. I mean, there's so much to talk about, to feel about. Maybe Deacon Jim, if you don't mind, maybe we're going to ask you a little bit about your understanding of aging and what it means to become a matriarch or patriarch of a family. What is that?
Well,
what happens to them?
I think that title really capsulizes a lot of what's going on as families age. And it's more than just an individual aging. We age as a family. We age as a community, sometimes within a parish if we're connected to that. But at some point, the oldest person in that community, we're at their funeral. And the baton, as it were, is passed. And it's in that community setting that all of this, I think, has the best kind of conversation around it. You know, when we talk about someone who is suddenly find themselves as the patriarch, they're now in the position of making decisions. Sometimes that's, in a sense, they've become virtually the oldest, depending on the condition that someone else in their family, if they may be affected with Alzheimer's type illnesses, that they are no longer able to make competent decisions for themselves. Suddenly a younger member of the family is the matriarch, is the patriarch, making decisions that they want to object to. They're like, not object to the decisions, but saying, you know, I shouldn't be making this. It's not my turn. And I think that the other aspect of that, as we look at and had the discussion about hospice care, it's so often the case that the person who has been told by their medical staff, by their physicians, that it's time for them to consider hospice, they're usually the first one to accept it. It's their family members, the community that's gathered around them and saying, "Oh, you can't let go. You know, you got to keep fighting." And they're missing the fact that in that period of hospice, it's an incredibly sacred time for that person, for their family, for their friends, and you can't replace it if you take that away. You know, so to deny them the chance to enter into that with an appropriate amount of time to grieve about what they're giving up, to share loving thoughts and stories of their life with their loved ones. There's no going back to that if you've cut that time short. So people need to understand that we'll embrace that more and more in our society.
I think in the embracing of that, Deacon Jim, is a gift. Sometimes you see people don't get that gift. Either they die suddenly, or maybe they don't have the people around them that you're talking about. I mean,
Right.
just to be able to see a father talk to a son, or a mother to a daughter, or vice versa, whatever the combinations are, to be able to kind of share things that this is the time you have to share that, and to ask some things, and sometimes maybe forgiveness. I mean, there's just so many. I just get a feeling that that's a great gift of time, and I hope people don't just take it away from somebody else. Father Anthony.
Yeah, and to add to that also is the beautiful sacrament of the anointing of the sick. We still have that caliber of people that feel as though if the priest comes, then that's the end. And yet it gives an opportunity for the priest, the pastoral staff, the deacons, to be able to minister to their loved ones. I mean, when I was a young priest and I started doing hospice work, I remember going to a family's house and hearing, having reconciliation, And I wasn't even off their property with my car, the person was at peace and was able to let go. So we need to be able to allow our visits. And because there are such few priests, yes, the sacrament is celebrated by the priest, but we have such wonderful chaplains and pastoral team that from each parish as well as hospitals that can really minister to our people. And a lot of times it's like, don't let them come in yet. They'll think it's weakness, and it isn't. It's more for strength. And those who celebrate the sacrament, there's just such a healing and acceptance that each of us have experienced in our own ministry.
Can you just add on to that a little bit? Because I don't think people hear this word often enough. Viaticum.
It's one of my favorite words because basically it's Latin for food for the journey. And it's that last time a Catholic will receive the Eucharist on this side of the grave. And it is to encourage them with the Lord's presence that they're not going into darkness. They're not going into into a tunnel, but they're going to the light of light, and they're carrying that light given to them at their baptism to enter in. And both the anointing of the sick and viaticum are, as many priests know, a very moving moment when the person if they are aware. See, sometimes they wait until their loved one is in a coma, and the hospice nurse or just the doctor says, "You better call a priest," and yet they don't have those words of assurance that they're going to the Lord. And one of the things that I kept thinking about when we were talking about this project is what was shared with me by one of my families. They had an aunt who was a member of a religious community, and she had died, and they went to the funeral. And at one moment, it was an emotional moment, but the youngest daughter reached over to her mom and she said, "Ma, Aunt Mary has been looking forward to this moment her entire life." And I sometimes wonder if we who believe realize that when we enter those doors, we come face to face to somebody we've been praying for and praying to our entire life.
Oh, Sam, you're going to get me to have tears in my eyes. I have just a vision of, a whole flock of folks up there, and not just because we're priests and priests-to-be, but everybody who's touched someone else and has gone before us. When we talk like this, and I wish we had 5 hours to talk like this, I always think of what the Lord said when he was going, and he didn't want him to go. And he said, "Unless I go, I can't prepare a place for you." Mm-hmm. And I just think how powerful that is, to think that when people go, they're really going to prepare a place for us, that somehow or other they can do things there, as St. Teresa said, that they could never do on earth. And the more we can let people feel that and love that and enjoy for that. In fact, it's amazing to me that we're talking like this. Just this morning, I got up early and I happened to look at my iPad for whatever, you do those things. And I got a message this morning that was sent to me last night, somewhere in the middle of the morning, by someone who said, "Just want to let you know that 14 and a half years ago, you came and celebrated Viaticum at the foot of my wife's bed before she died." 14 and a half years ago. And I'm saying to myself, they're the things that if that's, some people don't even know about Viaticum, don't even ask for Viaticum, don't even ask for us to come and do some of the things that are just a beautiful, beautiful moments that oh my gosh. Father Anthony.
Yeah, I was, maybe I'll try it here. I was pretty much going to start my talk with that when I worked in the Children's Hospital at Robert Wood, I sat in a lot of family meetings. And it was in the Children with Oncology. And the family's actually from your diocese, the Trenton Diocese. And the little girl was 7.5, full of cancer. And the head doctor looked at the family, looked at them, and they invited me in on the meeting and said, "There's nothing else we can do." And the little girl got up, and by that time, with all the treatment, her eyes looked like a chipmunk, and she looked up at the doctor and she says, "Can I go home?" And he says, "Yes, you can go home." And she walked over to me and she grabbed me by my hand and she goes, "Could you come to my house tonight?" And, I went to I said, "Let me go to my church, we're at my rectory, I'll be over." So, of course, Viaticum, I brought the Eucharist. She made First Communion early because we knew this day was going to come. So we prayed, we anointed, she took Eucharist, we prayed the Rosary, and the family and I, we sat there through the night, and actually was on the Feast of St. Anthony of Padua that God called her home. But, I said, for children, when they know that they're ready to go to Jesus, they have no fears. As adults, we have those fears. And I pray that each person in my parish now or wherever I'm ministering, that they could feel that comfortable that when the medical doctors say there's nothing I can do, then the spiritual, which is truly Jesus Christ, can use us to say, "Come home with us."
Is that where the
prepare
Lord
me to
said,
go
Father
home.
Anthony, unless you become like a little child?
Exactly.
Please talk to me a little bit more, though, and talk to all of us a little bit more about some of the directives, or some of the questions
directives-
that come up when we have to make some decisions.
For making the
about-
difficult decisions, there was I'm dating myself, when Advanced Directives first came out, the Catholic Advanced Directive, there was a cartoon of a person going to St. Peter's, to the gates of St. Peter's, with all the tubes and everything. And St. Peter said, "What took you so long?" And the response was, "They wouldn't let go of me." So when we discuss with families, we say, what is artificial that is not needed? And the perfect example would be Karen Ann Quinlan. When they took off the breathing machine, she lived for 20 more years. When it comes to feeding, I know that's a big, very hot topic, the feeding issue. When someone is at the end of life, sometimes the feeding could cause more difficulty than being able to. So a lot of times, even just wetting the mouth, Jello, or doing something to make them comfortable. We don't take food completely away, but we allow the body to shut down. That's where we need to make those distinctions with the family, because right away they think that they have to be able to give them everything possible, and their bodies are just saying it's time to go home. And that's a lot of what the pastoral team works with the families, no matter what age, from children to someone in their 90s. When I did hospital work, a lot of it was, right away, if having that desire that when someone is at the end of life, to be able to make them comfortable. And by making them comfortable, using a medication so that they're not anxious or in pain. And being able to not have all of the tubes and everything that seems to surround them. The medical profession is to be able to do everything possible to heal the person. Our profession is to bring the spiritual healing and allow God's will to be done.
Can someone, this is a question I guess I'm going to put out to you. Can someone who is, say, in hospice care or at that stage of their life, can they make a decision that they don't want to take any more medicine, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, sometimes people might say, well, how much more do I want to keep trying or experimenting or whatever you want to say?
Absolutely. With hospice, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
With hospice, if we know that if someone is in excruciating pain, but we know that family is coming from a distance, like one of my parishioners now, we're going to uplift the pain medicine just so that she would be aware of her loved ones and they can have some closure. But the minute we see horrific pain, then they're able to do that. And they're able to do that so beautifully now without using any type of cocktail to end life, but to make the person comfortable and then allow the Lord to do what the Lord does. It's so healthy for a family to turn around and say, Father, is there anything I can do to help this go faster? And I say, no, it's all in God's hands. And at that moment of death, they come and they say, Father, I might have to go to confession because I thought this. I says, you're no different than anybody else. You thought it, but you didn't act on it, and you allow God to do it. And they said, thank God, I allow God to take Mom when she took Mom, because I don't know how I could live with myself if I had something to do with her being go. And that's what attracted me to these two guys here and Father Michael to do this talk, because we got to get that across to people that's so needed.
What should people do before time? Should they have a living will? Is there an advance directive? What's available to people, and what should they be doing?
I'll let
Yeah.
you're the expert on
Well,
that.
my experience, everyone will tell you need a living will advance directive. My thing is have a good person to speak for you. If you cannot speak for yourself, have a good person to make your decisions.
Power of attorney?
Not even a power of attorney. Just have someone that's going to be able to make those decisions in the hospital if you're not able to make those decisions. You know, a lot of times power of attorney, medical power of attorney. Like I have 3 other brothers. The two I would have make decisions, that would be my brother Sam, Monsignor, and my brother Michael. My twin brother, he would be in my house taking whatever I got. You know what I'm saying? So make sure the person.
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Stop that. He would want to speed it up. No, I'm sorry. I'm only joking. But what I'm saying is allow the person that's making the decisions, someone that you speak to very closely, and that you're able to say to them, this is what I want, you know.
If I could just add one more point also. Please have the conversation.
Yes.
And children need to be strong enough to let their parents have that conversation.
So the conversation we know is we invite people to that conversation. Do the funeral rites really help somebody to grieve or to get over it? And can they also be cremated? That's a question that people always ask.
Always ask.
Cremation is allowed. Ideally, we would like cremation after the Mass, but we also recognize changing values in our society, so now the cremains can be brought into church, the cremated human remains, but it is important to have the viewing or a wake or a gathering before the Mass, to have the funeral Mass. I guess the one thing I like to stress is our funeral Masses are not a celebration of the living. It's a celebration of the promise of eternal life.
And a celebration of the great love that God loves us unconditionally, and it's a stepping stone into being born again to his eternal love. You know, have the conversations. Don't be afraid of them. It's nice to be able to think that there's a goal. It's kind of like saying we're part of this team and we want to win, and we want to get to the goal and know that we won the race. Don't be afraid. The Lord told us that 100 times. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.